On the morning of September 14, 1942, in the quiet coastal town of Falmouth, England, 17-year-old Margaret Peggy Thornton sat at her desk in the cramped back office of the local postal sorting facility. The autumn fog muffled the world outside, leaving her surrounded by the rustle of paper and the heavy canvas bags of mail. She was 3 months into her job, a position taken out of necessity after her father shipped out with the Royal Navy. Her world was one of routine: love letters from soldiers, government notices, mundane bills. What she could not have known was that her keen eye, a trait her teachers had called observant to a fault, was about to collide with a secret war. A war being waged not on battlefields, but in the envelopes passing through her own hands. The German intelligence services had spent nearly 2 years building what they believed was an unbreakable espionage network along the English coast. Their system was elegant, invisible, and relied on a simple, brilliant fact: people see what they expect to see. Peggy Thornton did not. It began with a stamp. Just one, on a letter to a Mrs. Constance Petton in the village of Mowan Smith. As she sorted, her hand hesitated. She held the envelope to the gray Cornish light. The king's profile was a fraction off-center. The perforations were spaced differently. The color was a shade too dark. "That is peculiar," she said to herself. Her colleague, Dorothy, glanced over. "What have you got there, dear?" Peggy showed her. "The stamp, it looks wrong." Dorothy squinted, shrugged. "You're imagining things. All stamps look the same to me. Sort it and move on." Peggy sorted it. But she did not move on. In the margin of her personal notebook, she made a small, precise note. Date. Name. Stamp seems off. She did not know why. It just felt important. Over the next 2 weeks, she found 4 more. Addressed to different people in different villages. All with that same, subtle wrongness. She noted each one, her curiosity a quiet, persistent flame. That flame was fanned into a fire one evening at her kitchen table. Her mother, Eleanor, noticed her studying the notes. Peggy explained the stamps, her frustration at not being able to define the flaw. She expected dismissal. Instead, her mother went still. "My mother was a postmistress," Eleanor said slowly. "During the last war, she told me something. In times like these, intelligence services sometimes use the post. They use counterfeit stamps. Because real ones can be traced." The words hung in the air. Counterfeit stamps. Secret messages. The idea was outlandish. The stuff of novels. Yet, it felt true. That night, Peggy lay awake, listening to the waves against the harbor wall, knowing she stood at the edge of something vast and hidden. The next morning, she went to her supervisor, Gerald Whitmore, a man of exhausted routine. She laid the 5 envelopes on his desk. "I've noticed something strange," she said, her voice steady despite her fear. Whitmore examined them, his initial skepticism turning to cold concentration. He held them to his lamp, ran his thumb along the edges. He asked no more questions. "Wait here," he said, his voice low. He made a telephone call, his words a whisper Peggy could not decipher. When he returned, his face was grim. "You have done the right thing," he said. "Speak of this to no one. Not your colleagues, not your friends, not even your mother. Some people will come to see you today. Answer them honestly." The people who came were not police or soldiers. They were 3 civilians in unremarkable clothes, with faces designed to be forgotten. The woman, who introduced herself as Miss Crawford, took Peggy to a bare room in a converted warehouse. "Start from the beginning," Miss Crawford said, her voice calm. "Leave out no detail." For 2 hours, Peggy talked. She described the stamps, the handwriting, the addresses. She showed her notebook. She repeated her mother's story. When she finished, the room was silent. Miss Crawford leaned forward. "You have a remarkable gift," she said. "What you have found is a communication network we have been trying to penetrate for months. These stamps are markers. They identify letters for a hidden web of operatives. We need your help to find more." Peggy was asked to become a silent soldier. To use her eyes as a weapon. To continue her job, but now with a magnifying glass and an ultraviolet lamp, screening every piece of mail for the ghostly signature of the forger. She agreed. What followed was a silent, relentless hunt. Within a month, she identified 23 more letters. Analysts decoded mundane phrases that hid reports on military movements and shipping schedules. The network was laid bare, letter by letter. Then, in early November, Peggy found the key within the key. A letter to a Mr. Thomas Hartley bore not only the counterfeit stamp, but a faint watermark, a tiny geometric pattern pressed into the very fiber of the paper. Miss Crawford returned immediately, urgency in her step. "This is a priority marker," she explained. "The information inside is critical. If it gets through, it will cost lives." They faced an impossible choice: intercept it and alert the network, or let it through and condemn men to death. They chose a third path. The letter was secretly opened. Its coded message was altered, the critical details changed. It was resealed with perfect precision and placed back into the stream of mail by Peggy's own steady hand. A convoy would sail a different route. False information would now flow to the enemy. On November 22nd, a convoy departed. Enemy submarines lay in wait at the location described in the original, intercepted letter. They found empty ocean. The convoy arrived safely. The failed attack was a silent scream of confirmation: the network was real, and now it was compromised. The trap was sprung in March of 1943. In a series of coordinated, silent raids across southern England, 11 individuals were taken. Among them, Thomas Hartley and a woman named Ingrid Carlson, a Swedish refugee who had been the network's coordinator, distributing the counterfeit stamps from her cover as a shipping translator. The network was dismantled. Analysts later estimated Peggy's intuition had shortened the war against this invisible enemy by 6 months. When the war neared its end, Miss Crawford visited Peggy's cottage one final time. She offered a formal position in intelligence. Peggy, who now dreamed of university, of understanding the mind that had served her so well, politely declined. From a leather case, Miss Crawford produced a small, plain bronze medal. It bore no name, no date, only a faint geometric design. "This is for you," she said. "It cannot be worn. It cannot be recorded. But we will remember." Peggy Thornton took the medal, hid it in a wooden box, and never spoke publicly of her war. She became a professor of psychology, studying the very nature of perception. In her academic papers, she sometimes wrote about the power of noticing, of the fresh pair of eyes that sees what experts miss. Her colleagues never knew they worked alongside a woman who, at 17, with nothing but attention and courage, had looked at a stamp and seen a secret. Who had asked a simple question: "Why does this feel wrong?" And in doing so, had quietly changed the course of history.